as a musician, I think we all know, like, practice makes perfect. But I think the real underrated aspect of being a musician is exploration, improvisation, just essentially guitar noodling, if you're hip to that phrase. You're just dedicating time to exploring the fretboard, trying to make those connections. This is kind of connected to my last video about boredom and how boredom essentially allows your brain to index what you know and create new connections and try and come up with more interesting ideas or solutions to whatever it is you're dealing with. When I was learning about that, I thought that really very much applied to musicians, especially when it comes to exploring, and again, guitar noodling. Because when you're noodling, unlike practicing where there's a specific thing or technique or kind of song that you want to learn and you're trying to figure out how to play that technique and or song to the best of your ability, trying to level up your ability. When you're noodling, there's kind of no set goal. Like I said, you're exploring, you're trying to discover new things. Whereas practicing is you're kind of like honing a craft. So you're not necessarily practicing a technique. So noodling kind of much like the boredom analogy. It's like you're just letting your brain explore, and how that exploration manifests into the fretboard of your guitar or whatever instrument that you play, to essentially try and find what's sonically possible. What's nice about this is there's kind of no pressure. Again, when you're learning a technique, say for example, you want to develop the same down picking skills of a James Hetfield of Metallica, because that takes time and effort to try and do well, perfectly, as good as James would do it. So the bar is clear, the goal is clear. So there's expectations on you. I wouldn't necessarily say that there's pressure on it. I mean, unless you were picked to replace James Hetfield and you have a few days to get that down. But in comparison with guitar noodling, there's absolutely zero expectations. Again, there's no objective. So you're just allowing your mind to improvise, and you're not trying to solve an equation per se. With noodling, you're just hoping that it would just stumble into new things that might interest you. And I'm not saying that this is completely without structure or benefit. I mean, the benefit I've kind of outlined already. Like, you're discovering new things. But it's hard to figure out how to like dedicate to it, because no one ever really says, I'm just going to sit here and noodle around for a few hours and hopefully I'll come up with a hit song. That's almost rarely, never how it works. But when you noodle, at least in my case, you'll stumble upon, say, like an interesting new chord or an interesting new phrase or a new lick that you want to explore further. And that's where it comes full circle back into to actual practice. Because once you've discovered something new, you want to see it through into something that is applicable to whatever kind of art that you're trying to accomplish at the time. So, like I said, it doesn't sound structured on paper. It does. I understand. It does seem kind of aimless, but I like in my time, I've found ways to try and incorporate or at least jump back between both practice and noodling. Say, like for example, when I'm writing a song and I'm stuck on this one part, or this one part of the song feels lacking, and I'm trying to see how I can spice it up further. That's when you activate your noodling brain, because like I said, when you're bored, again, the whole default mode brain, where it allows your brain to index what your thoughts are going through and try and make new connections. So in the case of the songwriting, um, you know the song you're trying to write, you already know the chords, you already know what parts are already there. So you want to try and noodle around to see what extra sauce you can add to make it really go all the way. So again, as you're noodling, you're exploring, the parameters are set, you know what's there. Just allow your brain to try and come up with new connections and new ways of doing things. And it's not necessarily like a technique or anything. So like it can come up with a brilliant melody that would really accentuate the song. And that's really what that's as much as you can really truly hope for in this case. I mean, stumbling, discovering, again, it doesn't sound ideal, but when you find it, like the feeling is still undeniable. It's like, wow, I discovered this new thing. I'm not saying you're like innovating or anything, but it works for you. It fits perfectly to what you're working on at the time. This is kind of a more practical version of my previous video in regards to boredom, because again, I wouldn't consider guitar noodling as kind of boredom, because I would never consider playing the guitar as a kind of menial task. But a lot of the same brain play happens there in regards to here's what you know, let's figure out more interesting ways to accomplish this. So if you're a musician, how do you toggle back and forth between practicing and noodling? They're both essential skills. I feel noodling doesn't get as much hype as practicing does. Because I feel, again, practicing, there's a definitive goal that you can strive for, that a lot of people have already strived for, because a lot of people are trying to learn the same thing. But when it comes to noodling, you're really trying to find your own path. So how do you do it?